The soft glow of evening light filtered through the restaurant's tall windows as Margaret Chen adjusted her worn coat nervously. At 32, she had learned that life rarely offered second chances. But tonight felt different. Her golden brown hair, carefully styled despite her tight budget, caught the warm light as she scanned the upscale dining room. She wasn't supposed to be here. This elegant place, with its crystal glasses and linen tablecloths, was far beyond what a single mother working 2 jobs could afford. But her sister had insisted, had practically begged her to take this blind date. "He's perfect for you, Maggie," Linda had said. "Successful, charming, and he specifically asked to meet someone genuine." Now, watching her date's face contort with barely concealed disgust as she mentioned her 4-year-old son Danny, Margaret felt her heart sink. The man across from her, all polished shoes and expensive cologne, had already glanced at his watch 3 times. "A child," he repeated, as if the word left a bitter taste. "Well, that certainly complicates things." Margaret's cheeks burned. She should have known better. Should have stayed home with Danny, reading him stories and sharing a simple dinner of mac and cheese. At least there, she was wanted. "Excuse me," she whispered, rising from her chair. "I need to powder my nose." But instead of heading to the restroom, she found herself walking toward the exit, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. The cold evening air hit her face as she stepped onto the sidewalk, and she realized she had no way home. She'd splurged on a taxi to get here, using money she'd saved from skipping lunches at work. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The voice was gentle, concerned. Margaret turned to see a tall man in a dark suit approaching from the restaurant's entrance. His brown hair was perfectly styled, and there was something kind in his warm eyes, so different from the coldness she'd just fled from. "I'm sorry," she stammered, wiping her eyes quickly. "I was just leaving. Were you the lady at table 12? He asked softly. I couldn't help but notice. "You seemed upset?" Margaret nodded, embarrassed. "My date didn't go as planned." The stranger's expression darkened slightly. "That man was incredibly rude. No one should speak to another person that way." He paused, studying her face with genuine concern. "I'm David, by the way. David Anderson." "Margaret," she replied, surprised by his kindness. David glanced back at the restaurant, then at Margaret's thin coat. "Have you eaten?" "Really eaten, I mean?" She shook her head, too proud to admit she couldn't afford the menu prices. "There's a wonderful little diner about 2 blocks from here," David said gently. "Nothing fancy, but they make the best apple pie in the city. Would you let me buy you dinner? Just as one human being helping another?" Something in his voice, free of expectation or ulterior motive, made Margaret nod. The diner was warm and welcoming, with red vinyl booths and the comforting smell of home cooking. David ordered coffee and pie, insisting Margaret get a proper meal. As she ate, she found herself talking, really talking, for the first time in months. "Danny's 4, she said, her face lighting up as she pulled out her phone to show a picture of a blond boy with bright eyes. "He's everything to me." David studied the photo carefully. "He has your smile," he said simply. "Tell me about him." For the next hour, Margaret shared stories of her son's curiosity, his kindness to stray cats, his incredible drawings that covered their small apartment's refrigerator. David listened with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions and laughing at Danny's antics. "You're a wonderful mother," he said finally. "That man back there, he didn't deserve even a moment of your time." Margaret felt tears threaten again, but these were different, warm and healing. "Thank you," she whispered. "I needed to hear that." When David insisted on calling her a taxi and paying the fare, Margaret protested weakly. But his kindness felt genuine, uncomplicated by expectations. "Take care of yourself, Margaret," he said, as she got into the cab. "And give Danny my regards." It wasn't until she was home, holding her sleeping son and reflecting on the evening's strange turn, that she realized she knew nothing about David Anderson, not his job, his life, or why he'd shown such unexpected kindness to a stranger. 3 weeks later, Margaret was walking Danny to the park when they passed a large office building. A bronze plaque by the entrance read, "Anderson Holdings, David Anderson, CEO." Her heart skipped. The kind stranger who'd rescued her from humiliation, who'd listened to her talk about her son with such genuine interest, was apparently one of the city's most successful businessmen. But as she remembered his gentle questions about Danny, his interest in her dreams of going back to school, she realized something profound. His wealth hadn't mattered in that diner. What mattered was his willingness to see her, really see her, as a person worthy of kindness and respect. Sometimes, Margaret reflected as she pushed Danny on the swings, the most meaningful connections happen when we're simply present for one another, when we choose kindness over judgment, understanding over assumption. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, that kindness comes back to us in ways we never expected. Not because we deserve a reward, but because genuine human connection has a way of creating its own gentle magic. The afternoon sun warmed her face as Danny's laughter filled the air, and Margaret found herself smiling. Life might not always offer second chances, but it certainly offered moments of grace when we need them most.